Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing this XTRONS head unit that I installed in my 2001 Mercedes S-Class. And before we get started, I want to thank XTRONS, who are the sponsors of today's video. Now let's jump in and go over the details. This radio has an 8-core processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of onboard memory, and a really nice 9-inch display. The display is a huge upgrade over the factory radio, which had a really small screen. Now the way this is installed, it ties into the factory sound system via the amplifier, and it uses a fiber optic decoder box to connect to the factory amplifier. So you retain the really good sound system and sound quality with a bunch of modern features. It also has GPS, 4G data capabilities if you want to add a mobile SIM card, and Wi-Fi. It also ties into the CAN bus system, which is really useful in a few ways. The steering wheel controls still work, so you can have your volume on the steering. It'll auto dim the screen when the headlights come on. And when you put the car in reverse, it's set up so that if you have a backup camera connected, it'll automatically switch to it. Now, mine's not set up yet, but if I did have one plugged in, it would display it right here. And the last thing that the CAN bus system is useful for is when you open a door, it'll actually show you which doors open, and that works for all 4 doors and the trunk. And now let's take a look at the interface. This is our main screen with some information from nav. We've got our music player display, our radio display, and we have a shortcut bar at the bottom that's always visible. Now on the shortcut bar on the bottom left, there's navigation, which is a shortcut to Google Maps. We have shortcut to music, which will play music that's either stored on board or on a flash drive that you plug in. We have our phone and Bluetooth menu, which will show you what phones are connected, and it'll allow you to dial numbers, you access your contacts, and make calls, all from this screen. We've got our Apple CarPlay and Android Auto menu, which will work for wireless Android Auto, wireless Apple CarPlay, and wired Android Auto. Then we have a shortcut to our radio, which uses the factory antenna, so that's really nice. And then the last one right here is settings. Now you'll probably notice this looks very similar to regular Android tablet or phone settings, and that's because this is just a very slightly modified Android version. And so we have standard things like network, apps and notifications, and all that. But one that's different and specific to head units is car infotainment. So let's take a look at this. Our first option is labeled as common, and that's our general options. Our first one here is sleep mode, which is a toggle on and off. And that will either determine that when you turn the car off, it shuts the Android unit down, or if it puts it to sleep, so it boots up really fast next time you turn on the car. Reverse volume suppression adjusts how much the volume is turned down when you put the car into reverse. And we have a boot logo screen and a reset button. I'll go into the boot logo in a little bit. We also have display options, a backlight, how bright you want it during the day, how bright you want it at night, automatic switch. We also have our key light color menu right here, which allows you to adjust the colors of the backlit touch buttons on the edge of the screen. We're back now that it's dark out, so you can see what it looks like. And these are the color settings I found to match the other buttons. And volume, just a regular volume. Sound is a shortcut to our EQ. And the EQ is actually really good on this. We have a 30-band equalizer. We have Smart Sound, which allows you to adjust the bass and vocals and some other things, including loudness, which will really crank up the bass. And we have some more advanced things like balance, delay, especially if you're using an aftermarket amplifier, filters like high pass and low pass, and sub out to tweak subwoofer settings or bass settings. Our video options are disable video in motion, which allows you to toggle whether the unit will stop video from playing when you're driving. Some apps require this to be off to work properly. For your backup camera, there's assistant lines and warning lines, And air conditioner is for other cars where the air conditioning is displayed through the factory head unit. Navigation has an option to change to your favorite navigation app, so if you download one from the Play Store, you can use that instead of Google Maps. We have our Bluetooth. This brings us to our Bluetooth settings like auto connect and auto answer calls. Steering wheel controls if you want to mess with that and customize those. And a device about. We can also navigate all the apps that are installed by swiping left and right. Navigation is our whatever navigation app we want to set up. It's going to be the same as this. So right now it's Google Maps. Bluetooth music will take us to our phone. So it would be this. We got a shortcut to our radio, shortcut to videos if you have any stored on board or on a flash drive that you plugged in. Music, Bluetooth, AV-in is useful for any device that outputs video that you would plug into the back of the head unit. DSP is another shortcut to our equalizer setup. Car info is for other configurations, so it's not used in this car. We got a Chrome browser, we've got our contacts, messaging, YouTube, gallery for any images that you've stored on board or on a flash drive. The Play Store, which is really nice if you want to install any of your favorite apps. Maps, voice search, and Google. And another shortcut to our settings. And right here, what's labeled as topic switching is actually a UI switch. So there are different themes on board, and this is another theme right here. It looks a little different. So, see, it's pretty different looking, but it has all the same features. And instead of being a shortcut bar on the bottom, it's on the side. And on the last screen, we have our APK installer if you want to install apps without using the App Store, a file manager to browse your files on board or on a flash drive, GPS test, onboard instructions, which is really useful, and DAB Plus if you're in a country that uses DAB Plus for radio, another shortcut to Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and the Torque app. Now the Torque app is useful if you have an OBDII Bluetooth dongle and you want to get real-time data on your revs, coolant, and things like that. So XTRONS also sells Bluetooth dongles for OBDII, so if you were interested in having this kind of information displayed while you're driving, you can order one from them as well. Now that covers all the apps, so let me show you one of the cool things you can do to customize the radio to your liking. Now in your car infotainment settings menu, in common, there's a boot logo option, and so it's password protected, but it's 5678. And in there, you have the option to change the first splash screen that appears when you turn the head unit on, when you turn the car on. Now, I actually made a Mercedes logo, so I loaded that on, and that looks like this when you boot it. If you plug in a flash drive, you can make a picture. I used a 1280 by 720 resolution, which is the resolution of the screen, and it looks really nice. So it's really straightforward. Just a flash drive, and if you get an image from the computer, you can just load it in. Now if you have Android, you can use Android Auto. I really like Android Auto, and that's one of the main things I use on this head unit because it keeps all my favorite apps on board, and I don't have to worry about connecting the head unit to any network. It keeps everything up to date. I can pick up where I left off and listen to music on my headphones and just resume on here, keep listening to my podcast, and it just works really well. Now, Android Auto works with both a wired connection and a wireless connection. And you can also use Apple CarPlay with the wireless connection. And all the benefits I mentioned for Android Auto also apply to Apple CarPlay. Now, the way I have this set up, I have the USB inputs for the radio that come down into this compartment. And that allows me to plug in, if I want to, a flash drive, which is how I got the boot screen on, and it allows me to plug in my phone to either charge it or use Android Auto. And one of the benefits of plugging in your phone via USB, whether it's an iPhone or Android, is that you can use USB tethering to provide data to the unit. So if you're away from a Wi-Fi network and you don't want to get a SIM card to use data on this, you can just tether your phone and then log into your account, get your favorite apps on the Play Store if you want to use them on board. So there's a lot of ways to connect this to the internet. If you're close to your house, you can just connect it via Wi-Fi onto your Wi-Fi network. And if you want to have connectivity everywhere without using your phone, you can get a SIM card and plug that into the harness in the back and have internet connectivity all the time. But if you're using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, you don't really have to worry about this being connected to the internet. Now you're probably thinking, this is really cool, you can get all these features on board, but how hard is it to install? Well, it's not too difficult getting it set up. The only thing that can be a little more involved depends on whether you have a pre-facelift or a facelifted version of the S-Class, because the fiber optic system is different and you have to make a couple different connections and a slightly different approach. This bezel here is actually a replacement piece that replaces the factory wood because of the different size of the screen. And it's very slightly different from the factory wood, but you have to get pretty close to notice. Now, like I mentioned, you can install this in any year of the W220 S-Class. You'll just have to get a decoder box that matches the fiber optic system that your car comes with. For pre-facelift cars, the fiber optic system is D2B and requires a D2B decoder like this one. And for facelift cars, the fiber optic system is MOST and requires a decoder like this. I'll leave links to both in the video description. Now, if you want to see a detailed installation for this radio, I actually made a video that you can go check out, and I'll link in the description and right up here. There's a couple of things to be aware of when you install a head unit like this. One of them that's most noticeable is that right here in the corner, you're probably used to seeing the time displayed right there. And that is actually tied to the factory head unit, and so it disappears once you replace it. Instead, you have the time right here, and it's also always visible when you're in Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Now, another feature that no longer works with the new head unit is the displays like navigation and audio, because those were also tied to the factory head unit, and the new one doesn't communicate with this screen. So that's just something to be aware of. So do I recommend this head unit? Yeah, definitely. It's a really nice upgrade. I really like having Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and the screen is really responsive and very nice to use. It also sounds really good with the factory amplifier, and I think that might actually have made this car one of the best sounding cars that I've driven. And before we wrap up, I want to say another big thank you to XTRONS for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in getting one of these head units for your S-Class, I'll leave links to what I used in the video description. They also make head units for a bunch of other models, and I've actually installed another one in my C-Class, which I've been using for over a year. So if you're interested in getting a radio like this, XTRONS has actually provided a 20% discount code that I'll put in the video description. If you have any questions about this head unit, let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see more car projects like rebuilds or cheap European cars, or other radio installs like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.